Hello, and welcome to another episode of The End of the Search. This one I call it Keep the Paddles in the Boat. It had to do with a conversation that I had with a friend of mine yesterday. And the paddles would be thoughts. And the analogy here is that life is actually like a boat, and you are that boat that is floating on a river that has already a destination established. And what happens is when we start paddling, meaning believing the thoughts, you should go this way, you should go that way, we experience the consequence of the struggle trying to go against the current. And on top of that, when we find ourselves, because at sometimes it appears as if though we reach certain destinations, we find out that the consequence of that destination was not as pleasurable or as wonderful as we thought it was going to be. And in the end, all is pointing to just keeping the paddles in the boat, and you see how life is unfolding. And without the interpretation of the content of the mind, it's seeing the play unfolding while I just remain as the witness of it. And this is what we're always pointing to. Now, these videos are paradoxical. I said this over again, because even if I suggest to not believe the content of the mind, that's not going to happen because I say so. That happens if it's part of your life journey. Now, if in your life journey, life is presenting you information like this one, then act as if you did have the choice not to believe the content of the mind and celebrate that. Because in my case, for example, I am aware that the thoughts appear, the content of the mind appears, and yes, I also notice that it seems as though I have the choice of being able to observe them. So, once again, just notice that life is unfolding in a way that now is allowing you to recognize that you can look at the content of the mind without identified with it. See? By doing so, you experience what is referred to as the peace that surpasses all understanding. And this is so simple, so obvious. And yet, why is this so overlooked? Because once again, there's a strong identification with the me, with the person, with all my problems, with all the things that is happening around me, which is nothing but the mind interpreting. You see, right now, you are right here. This is it. And this is unquestionable and undeniable. This is it. Can you see that this is it? Can there be anything other than this is it? No. So this is it. Now, this is the boat that I'm pointing to that is floating on the river of life. This is, you are that boat, just floating, okay? Now, thoughts are the paddles that while the river of life is unfolding, while you're floating on the river of life, is always translating, interpreting, looking for danger, what could happen and everything, projecting about a future and a past, and yet you remain as you are. Why? Because if you don't take those paddles out and begin to paddle anywhere, you're fine. Sometimes in the movie may appear that there's so threat, but when you see the threat coming, you stay in the boat and you notice that without letting the mind trying to take the paddles and paddle somewhere else, you notice that the boat makes a turn, you see? And that threat, it's gone because it was just basically a passing cloud, a passing thought. So now all you're doing is keeping the paddles in the boat always as you move through the river of life. And just notice how it all unfolds because it's doing it anyway. You see, this is the interesting thing, that some people think that they can prevent stuff or they can plan stuff. And as long as you believe that, just keep paddling in that direction, and all you're doing is just basically fighting against the current. Because the current is pointing in the direction already. And the fear of letting the current take you is basically a belief that suggests that what may happen if I just let the river flow. Why? Because you see everybody paddling, you assume that's the right thing to do. And some seem to be paddling in a particular direction. And then they tell you how great this is, but then when you paddle in that direction, you find out that it's not so. And you also find out that they are not as happy as they thought that they were. You see? Some people cope with life in different ways, and some people cannot. And you cannot compare yourself with how others may be coping with it. I mean, I see politicians, for example, and people in public figures who take so much heat and they seem to cope with it. You know, they do the best they can trying to coping with it. But then if you were to put yourself in the same situation that they are, you may break down. Is that means that they are stronger or better? No, it's just they cope with the pain differently. There's a line in the Course in Miracles that says, tolerance for pain may be high, but it's not without limit. Sooner or later comes the time when people begin to ask, there's gotta be a better way. So I am not here to judge how people cope with their own pain. I don't know. Some people can deal with so much heat. I probably cannot. But it doesn't matter, because what we all have in common is is the boat. Is the boat that is untouched by anything, that is flowing, right? It's basically the capacity of looking at the paddles and not engage with them. Because once again, sooner or later, everyone is going to have to put the paddles in the boat because they're going to be exhausted. The analogy that I always use is like the salmon. You look at the salmon going upstream and people are so, that's really, look how much he's doing, how much effort, and they're so they applaud that effort. But the problem is that the salmon going upstream, when jumps out of the water, ends up in the bear's mouth. So what was that effort good for if you're going to end up in the bear's mouth anyway? You see? But we don't see that. We look at all the effort and we take so much pride on that, and we just applaud all of that, not realizing that it's just basically paddling like crazy when life is offering a much better choice, which is just let it be. Because once again, it's not that you have the choice of letting it be or not, it's that life is going the way it's going to go anyway. Even though the mind suggests that I can paddle in a direction or the other one. If you believe that, I always say that there's another line in the Course in Miracles, which I love, when Jesus or Holy Spirit or whatever you want to call that voice says, if you want to be like me, I will teach you, knowing that you and I are the same. If you want to be different, if you rather be different, I will wait until you change your mind. Well, these videos are not about telling you what to do or not to do in a sense of paddle better or something. It's just the opposite. It's about letting go, surrender, so you can have the experience of the beingness that you are. You see? This is not esoteric. This is not philosophical. It's a fact right now. Right this moment, if you drop the paddles, meaning if you don't believe the thoughts right now, what remains? And don't answer, because I'm not asking for an answer. I'm pointing to what is. It doesn't matter how your life may be going right now. It's just you're in the boat is trying to get you out of all of that, but the mind, which is the paddles, is trying to paddle in everywhere. What do I do? What should I do? I have to go this way. Look what could happen. Just stop paddling, put the paddles in the boat, and now tell me, what is your direct experience? Okay? If you don't believe the thoughts, if you don't pick up the paddles. This is not denial. This is not coping. This is not covering. No, no, no. This is what is right now. If you don't believe any thoughts, tell me. Well, don't tell me anything. I'm just saying for yourself what remains. You see? Well, that remains, which is the essence of being, where this is all pointing to. And within that beingness, just notice how life unfolds. And thoughts appear, sensations appear, circumstances appear, and you remain as you are. You see? That's how you keep the paddles in the boat. And then as you see how life unfolds and how life lives itself, you develop the trust in life. At the beginning, where the mind is so conditioned about everything that is being taught, how could you trust? Well, eventually you have to trust, because you're going to find out that life is not going to go your way. So at some point, the tolerance for pain is going to come to a place that I cannot deal with this anymore. And then you surrender. And in the surrendering, because life sometimes forces you to do so, you believe it or not, you feel like it doesn't matter which way I row, which way I paddle, it doesn't matter. I'm paddling it, and you're just running in circles. Eventually, I come to the place that I said, I cannot do this anymore, and just put the paddles back on the boat, and you said, who cares? And in that moment, you notice how the boat adjusts itself. And then you begin to flow through the river of life. And you're at peace with what is. And the more you identify with that peace, the more trust is developing it. And you finally go, you know what? I don't know anymore. All I know is that I'm not struggling. Life is taking care of itself. It's unfolding. You see? I'm taken care of. Not because things are going the way I want to, or I have all these things that I think I want. No. It's because I'm just resting in this boat that is basically very kindly and loving, is trying to point in the direction of myself. It was basically telling me, you're safe, you're fine. Because you are, because of what you have or what you do or where did you go. No, you're safe and sound because you are. Seek you first the kingdom of God and its righteousness. Get to know who you really are. And everything is added on to you because it's a part of you. Not as a separate thing that you're acquiring, but because there's a recognition that in the I am, everything is provided, so that the peace and the love that you are remains as such. Have always remained as such. It's just being overlooked, overshadowed by this paddling everywhere. The paddling stop, or the rowing stop, and I rest in the I am. And you rest in peace. Well, this is the inspiration that came through. I hope it served. And as always, may peace permeate the mind so that love can become evident.